She laughed when the humans stepped forward, called him weak, worthless, just another primitive species playing soldier. But when the forest's deadliest predators bowed before him, Princess Vara realized she hadn't just underestimated humanity. She'd missed something the ancient beasts recognized instantly. The grand hall of the Galactic Academy shimmered under the light of 3 suns streaming through crystalline windows. Princess Vara of the Althean Empire stood at the center, her silver armor reflecting her royal status. Around her gathered the galaxy's finest warriors, each one a champion from their respective worlds. Today marked the selection ceremony, where elite warriors would choose their partners from the Academy's trainee program. The pairings would determine who would face the legendary trial of Valdris, a test that separated true warriors from pretenders. When the ceremony master called for trainees to step forward, a human emerged from the back ranks. His name was Marcus Chen, and he wore the plain gray uniform of a first-year trainee. No decorations adorned his chest, no weapons hung at his side, just a simple training blade and a worn backpack. The moment he stepped into the light, Princess Vara's laughter cut through the hall like a blade. The sound echoed off the high ceilings, sharp and cruel. Other elites joined in, their voices creating a chorus of mockery. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, their planet only discovered a decade ago. They possessed no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no telepathic abilities. They were, by all galactic standards, unremarkable. Princess Vara stepped toward Marcus, her boots clicking against the polished floor. She circled him slowly, her eyes scanning him with obvious disdain. She spoke loud enough for everyone to hear, ensuring maximum humiliation. She questioned how a species that couldn't even survive their own planet's wildlife thought they could compete among the stars. She mocked his small stature, his lack of cybernetic enhancements, his pathetically short time at the academy. Marcus stood silent throughout, his dark eyes steady, his expression calm. He didn't defend himself, didn't argue, didn't show anger. When Vara finished her tirade, he simply bowed with quiet respect and stepped back into line. The princess announced she would choose Cross, a towering Drachner warrior whose black scales had turned back plasma fire in a dozen battles. The crowd roared approval. Marcus was assigned to supply duties for Team 7, relegated to carrying equipment while others competed for glory. As the ceremony ended and warriors celebrated their pairings, Marcus walked alone to the preparation chambers. Academy Master Thon, an ancient Krellian with 4 wise eyes, watched from the shadows. He had seen thousands of warriors pass through these halls over his 2 centuries of service. He recognized something in the human's quiet demeanor, something the princess had completely missed. That evening, Thon found Marcus in the equipment room, carefully checking supplies with meticulous attention. The old master asked why Marcus showed no anger at the insult he'd received. Marcus looked up and smiled gently, explaining that his grandmother had taught him that anger clouds judgment and wastes energy better spent on preparation. Thon's eyes gleamed with interest. He informed Marcus that tomorrow's trial in Valdris Forest had broken stronger warriors than anyone in that ceremony hall. Creatures there didn't care about rank or reputation, only about survival instincts and respect for the natural order. Marcus nodded, continuing his preparations. That night, while others drank and boasted, Marcus sat alone reviewing maps of Valdris Forest, studying pages about the creatures that lived there, learning patterns that others ignored. In his eyes burned something Princess Vara would soon understand. Not rage, not pride, but something far more dangerous. Purpose. Dawn broke blood-red over Valdris Forest, painting the massive trees in shades of crimson and gold. The forest stretched beyond the horizon, a primordial wilderness that predated the galactic civilizations by millions of years. 50 teams assembled at the forest's edge, each consisting of 1 elite warrior and 1 trainee. The rules were simple and brutal: retrieve a starfire crystal from the forest's heart within 3 days, survive whatever the forest threw at them, and return alive. Only 10 crystals existed, meaning 40 teams would fail. Failure meant dishonor, and in this forest, it often meant death. Princess Vara stood with Cross at the front line, her polished armor gleaming, his massive frame casting a shadow over nearby teams. They exuded confidence, superiority, and the absolute certainty of victory. Marcus stood apart with Team 7, led by Zara, a feline warrior known for speed and precision. Since their assigned trainee had fallen ill, Marcus would serve as their porter, carrying their equipment without participating in combat. Zara made it clear he should keep up or be left behind. The starting horn blared across the clearing, and teams surged into the forest like a tidal wave. The forest swallowed them immediately. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the canopy, creating a twilight world of shadows and strange sounds. Princess Vara's team moved with aggressive speed, Cross using his immense strength to clear obstacles and intimidate smaller creatures. Team 7 moved more cautiously, Zara's tactical mind choosing paths that avoided obvious danger. Marcus followed silently, carrying packs that would have burdened two normal humans, yet his breathing remained steady and his pace never faltered. Hours passed as teams spread deeper into the forest. Then the screaming began. Team 12 encountered a thornback ravager, a territorial predator with armor like reinforced stone and claws designed to shred metal. The creature appeared from underground, erupting beneath their feet. The elite warrior drew his plasma blade, but the ravager was faster. It tore through his defenses in seconds, leaving nothing but silence and blood. The trainee fled screaming into the forest, never to emerge. Other teams heard the death cry and adjusted their paths, fear beginning to replace confidence. Princess Vara, however, refused to show weakness. When her scanner identified a shortcut through a narrow ravine, she ordered her team to take it despite Cross's concerns. The Drachner warrior had survived by trusting his instincts, and his instincts screamed danger. Meanwhile, Marcus noticed something others had missed. Deep scratches marked the trees along their path, carved in patterns that seemed random but weren't. He stopped, examining the marks more closely. They formed territorial warnings, messages left by predators to mark boundaries. Zara noticed him studying the trees and asked what he saw. Marcus explained these were claw marks from a pack hunter, something large and intelligent that coordinated attacks. Zara's confidence wavered slightly. She asked how a human trainee could read alien beast signs. Marcus explained that Earth's wilderness had taught his people to read nature's language long before they reached the stars. Wolves, bears, big cats, all left similar territorial markers. The patterns were universal among apex predators. Zara was about to ask more when a roar shattered the forest's ambient noise. It came from the ravine where Princess Vara's team had ventured. Marcus's face went pale as he recognized the sound. Shadow Stalkers, pack hunters that killed with terrifying coordination. Zara ordered her team to circle around, to avoid getting caught in someone else's battle. But Marcus stopped, his eyes fixed on the direction of the screaming. Zara reminded him that the princess had mocked him, humiliated him, deemed him worthless. Marcus met her gaze and said something that changed everything. He said that she was still someone's daughter, still a living being who deserved a chance to survive. Before Zara could stop him, Marcus dropped the heavy packs and ran toward the sound of battle, his simple blade drawn, rushing to save the woman who had laughed at him just yesterday. Marcus reached the ravine's edge and looked down into chaos. 6 Shadow Stalkers circled Princess Vara and Cross, their midnight black fur absorbing light, their ember-red eyes glowing with predatory intelligence. These creatures stood 12 feet tall at the shoulder, their movements coordinated with the precision of a military unit. Cross had already engaged 2 of them, his energy shield flickering under repeated strikes, his massive sword carving through the air in desperate defense. But the Stalkers were smart, too smart. While Cross fought the frontal assault, 2 more circled behind Vara, cutting off her escape. She fired her plasma rifle, the shots accurate and deadly, but the creatures dodged with supernatural agility. One shot connected, burning through a Stalker's shoulder, but it barely slowed. The wounded creature snarled and pressed the attack harder, driven by pain into greater fury. Princess Vara screamed for Cross, but the Drachner warrior was trapped in his own battle, unable to break free without exposing himself to lethal strikes. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, moving from dangerous to fatal in seconds. Marcus didn't hesitate. He jumped. 20 feet of empty air, then impact. He landed on the back of the stalker closest to Vara, his training blade driving into the creature's muscular shoulder. The blade wasn't designed to kill something this large, but it wasn't meant to. Marcus only needed the creature's attention. The stalker roared in shock and rage, bucking violently to throw off this tiny attacker. Marcus held on with strength born from desperation, his legs wrapped around the creature's torso, his free hand gripping coarse fur. The stalker twisted, slammed its body against the ravine wall, and Marcus lost his grip. He hit the rocky ground hard, pain exploding through his ribs and shoulder. His vision blurred, breath knocked from his lungs. The stalker he'd attacked turned fully toward him now, the other battles momentarily forgotten. It approached slowly, savoring the kill, jaws opening to reveal teeth like daggers. Marcus struggled to his feet, favoring his left side where ribs had cracked. He had no weapon now, no armor, no backup. Just himself and a creature that had killed warriors far more equipped than him. But he didn't run. He stood his ground and looked directly into the stalker's glowing eyes. What happened next defied everything the princess and Cross understood about nature and combat. The Shadow Stalker stopped. Its advance halted as if hitting an invisible wall. The creature's head tilted, nostrils flaring as it scented Marcus deeply. Its eyes widened, showing something impossible, recognition. A low rumble emerged from its throat, not the growl of aggression but something else entirely. The other 5 stalkers froze mid-attack. All 6 apex predators turned toward Marcus, their coordinated assault completely abandoned. The largest stalker, clearly the alpha female, pushed through her pack. She was massive even among these giants, her body covered in scars from countless battles, her presence radiating authority that made the others submit. This creature had killed legendary warriors, had survived weapons that could level buildings. She approached Marcus with slow, deliberate steps. Princess Vara watched in stunned silence, unable to process what she was seeing. Cross lowered his weapon, equally confused. Marcus met the alpha's gaze without flinching, without showing the fear that hammered in his chest. Then he did something that made everyone's breath catch. He spoke to the creature, but not in any galactic language. He used a series of low growls, rumbles from deep in his chest, and subtle body language that mimicked the stalker's own communication. He was speaking their language. The alpha's eyes went wide with shock. She leaned closer, her hot breath washing over Marcus. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the alpha lowered her massive head until her nose nearly touched the ground. The other 5 stalkers immediately followed, all 6 apex predators bowing before this small, injured human. Princess Vara's voice came out as barely a whisper, broken and confused, asking what Marcus was. Marcus didn't answer. He placed his hand gently on the alpha's scarred head, showing respect rather than dominance. He spoke again in that strange language of growls and gestures, a conversation that flowed between human and beast. The alpha responded, her sounds carrying meaning that only Marcus seemed to understand. When they finished, Marcus turned to Vara and Cross, his voice steady despite his pain. He told them to lower their weapons slowly and carefully. He explained these creatures weren't mindless monsters but intelligent beings protecting their territory. The alpha had cubs hidden nearby, and they had responded to the intrusion the only way apex predators knew how. Vara asked the question everyone was thinking, how could a human possibly know this? Marcus's answer was simple. He said that before humans reached the stars, they had learned to listen to Earth's predators, to understand that every creature has a language if you're patient enough to learn it. The Shadow Stalkers weren't so different from Earth's wolves, and Marcus's grandmother had taught him their ways since childhood. The Shadow Stalkers melted back into the forest, leaving the ravine in profound silence. Princess Vara stood frozen, her worldview cracking like fragile glass. Everything she'd been taught about strength, about dominance, about the natural order of power suddenly seemed inadequate. Cross approached Marcus carefully, examining the human with new eyes. The Dracnar warrior had fought across 100 battlefields, had seen warriors from every known species, but never had he witnessed an apex predator bow to anyone, much less to a being it could swallow whole. Marcus swayed on his feet, adrenaline fading and leaving only pain. His cracked ribs screamed with each breath, his shoulder throbbed where it had struck stone, and blood seeped from a dozen small cuts. Zara and Team 7 arrived moments later, weapons drawn and ready for battle, only to find an impossible scene, the princess and her champion alive, the predators gone, and Marcus barely standing. Zara rushed to him, her medical training kicking in as she examined his injuries. She asked what happened, though the question seemed almost rhetorical given the impossibility before her eyes. Marcus explained simply that he had asked the stalkers nicely, and they had listened. The joke fell flat as he collapsed, his body finally acknowledging the damage it had sustained. Princess Vara made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She ordered her team to make camp in the ravine for the night, to let Marcus recover before continuing. Cross questioned the decision, pointing out they were losing valuable time while other teams pushed ahead. Vara's response was firm and left no room for argument. She stated that they would not leave an injured warrior behind, regardless of his rank or species. That night, as makeshift shelters were erected and supplies distributed, an unusual alliance formed. Team 7 and Vara's team combined resources, sharing the ravine's defensible position. Zara wrapped Marcus's ribs with medical tape, administered pain suppressors, and warned him that he needed real medical attention soon. Marcus thanked her quietly, his eyes already closing from exhaustion and medication. As the others settled in for a tense night, Princess Vara sat alone at the camp's edge, staring into the darkness beyond their small fire. Cross joined her, his massive frame settling onto the rocky ground with surprising grace. He didn't speak immediately, knowing the princess needed time to process. Finally, Vara broke the silence, her voice small and uncertain in a way it had never been before. She asked if Cross thought she had been wrong about Marcus, about humans, about everything. The Dracnar warrior considered his response carefully. He explained that in his culture, warriors were taught that strength comes in many forms, like water that can carve stone through persistence or fire that can purify through transformation. Cross said he had been taught to recognize these different strengths, yet he too had missed Marcus's nature entirely. He admitted they had both judged based on appearance and assumptions rather than observation and wisdom. Vara appreciated his honesty, but it didn't ease her shame. She had built her entire identity on being superior, on representing the peak of galactic civilization. Having that identity shattered by a human trainee in gray clothes was devastating. Cross offered perspective, suggesting that perhaps the lesson wasn't about her being wrong, but about there being more to learn than she had imagined. True warriors, he said, never stopped growing, never stopped learning. The conversation drifted to Marcus himself, and Zara, who had been listening from her position by the fire, joined in. She shared what little Marcus had told her about Earth, about a planet where humans had emerged as apex predators despite having no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. They had survived through intelligence, cooperation, and understanding the world around them. They had learned to read the weather in cloud formations, to track prey through disturbed grass, to calm dangerous animals through patience and respect. Morning came with heavy mist rolling through the ravine, turning the world ghostly and surreal. Marcus woke to find his injuries had stiffened overnight, making movement agonizing. He forced himself up anyway, knowing they had lost precious time. The group prepared to move, but before they left, something unexpected happened. A sound echoed through the mist, the low rumble of a Shadow Stalker. The teams tensed, weapons rising, but Marcus raised his hand for calm. The Alpha emerged from the fog, moving with purpose. She carried something in her jaws, approaching Marcus directly. She dropped her burden at his feet, a cluster of lumina moss, a rare plant known for its healing properties. Marcus's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. He knelt, ignoring the pain in his ribs, and touched his forehead to the Alpha's massive paw in a gesture of deep respect. The creature rumbled softly, then vanished back into the mist as silently as she'd appeared. Vara watched this exchange with something like wonder dawning in her eyes. She finally understood that what she had witnessed wasn't luck or trick, but a fundamental difference in how Marcus approached the world. Where she sought to conquer, he sought to understand. Where she demanded submission, he offered respect. And somehow, impossibly, his way had proven stronger. As they prepared to continue toward the forest's heart, Vara approached Marcus. She didn't apologize yet, her pride still wrestling with her new understanding, but she offered something perhaps more valuable. She asked if he would teach her, not as a student asking a master, but as a warrior seeking to learn a new form of combat. Marcus smiled despite his pain and agreed, saying that every warrior has something to teach and something to learn, and he would be honored to share what he knew if she would share her knowledge in return. 2 days into the trial, the remaining teams converged on the forest's heart like rivers flowing to an ocean. Of the 50 teams that had entered, only 15 remained. The others had fled in terror, fallen to the forest's dangers, or simply disappeared into the endless green darkness. The forest's heart was a clearing unlike anything else in Valdris, a perfect circle of stone surrounded by trees so ancient they had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Bioluminescent fungi grew in spiral patterns on these massive trunks, casting the clearing an ethereal blue-green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. In the exact center stood an altar of black stone, so smooth it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Upon this altar rested the 10 starfire crystals, each one glowing with inner fire, each one worth more than most planets' annual economies. But between the surviving teams and their prize coiled the forest's ultimate guardian, the creature that had protected this place for 10,000 years. The Titan Wyrm was a serpent the size of a colony ship, its scales deep emerald that shifted to sapphire in the pulsing light, its eyes molten gold that held an intelligence older than most species in the galaxy. Legend spoke of this creature, how it had been placed here by the Ancient Ones as a test of worthiness, how it could sense a warrior's true nature with a single glance. 3 teams arrived at almost the same moment. Princess Vara's group with Marcus and the combined Team 7, Team 3 led by Garen the Scarlix mercenary whose reputation for ruthlessness preceded him, and Team 9 consisting of a hive-mind pair who moved with perfect synchronization. The teams spread around the clearing's edge, each assessing the situation, calculating odds, planning strategies. Garen was first to speak, his voice harsh and grating like metal scraping stone. He observed aloud that with 10 crystals and only 3 teams remaining, the math worked beautifully. His tone suggested he'd happily reduce the competition if necessary. Princess Vara's hand moved to her weapon, but Marcus placed a gentle hand on her arm. He was studying the Wyrm with intense focus, his eyes tracking the creature's breathing, the way it held its coils, the direction of its gaze. Something was wrong. Vara noticed his concern and asked what he saw. Marcus explained that the Wyrm wasn't sleeping or resting, it was watching and waiting. This wasn't a combat trial but something else entirely, something more subtle and dangerous. He said the creature was testing them, and violence would be the wrong answer. Garen laughed at this, calling Marcus a fool and a coward. The Scarlix mercenary had built his reputation on taking what he wanted by force, and he saw no reason to change tactics now. Before anyone could stop him, Garen raised his plasma cannon and fired directly at the Wyrm. The blast was powerful enough to vaporize a battle tank, designed to punch through reinforced military armor. It struck the Wyrm's scales and deflected harmlessly into the canopy, setting a distant tree ablaze. The effect on the Wyrm was immediate and catastrophic. Those ancient golden eyes snapped open fully, fixing on Garen with an intensity that made the air itself feel heavy. The temperature in the clearing dropped 10 degrees in seconds. The Wyrm's body uncoiled with terrible purpose, revealing its true size for the first time. It was even larger than initial estimates, each individual scale the size of a shield, its body capable of crushing buildings. A sound emerged from its throat, not quite a roar but something deeper, more fundamental, like the earth itself groaning in anger. Then it struck. The WYRM's tail moved faster than something that massive had any right to move, sweeping across the clearing like a tidal wave of muscle and scale. Garen's entire team scattered, but not all were fast enough. 2 warriors were caught in the sweep, sent flying into the ancient trees with bone-breaking force. They didn't get up. The hive-mind pair made a rapid calculation and fled, deciding survival outweighed glory. That left only Vara's combined group and Garen's decimated team facing an enraged Titan Wyrm. Cross stepped forward, his warrior instincts demanding action. He announced he would hold the Wyrm's attention while the others grabbed crystals and ran. It was a death sentence and everyone knew it, but Cross accepted it with the calm resignation of a warrior who had always known he would die in battle. Vara started to object, but Marcus spoke first, his voice firm despite his lingering injuries. He said fighting wouldn't work, that Cross would die for nothing, that there had to be another way. Garen screamed that the human was a coward, that action was required, that hesitation meant death. But Marcus was already moving, not away from the Wyrm but toward it. Zara shouted for him to stop, Vara reached out to grab him, but he was beyond their reach, walking calmly toward the most dangerous creature any of them had ever encountered. The Wyrm's head swung toward him, jaws opening to reveal rows of teeth each as long as Marcus was tall, a throat that could swallow him without effort. Marcus stopped 10 feet from those massive jaws, close enough to feel the heat of the creature's breath, close enough to see his reflection in those molten gold eyes. And then, instead of fighting or fleeing, Marcus knelt. He placed his hands flat on the stone ground, lowered his head in a posture of complete submission and respect, and spoke. His words were in the common tongue, but underneath them ran something else, a resonance that seemed to bypass language entirely and speak directly to something primal. Marcus addressed the Wyrm as Great Guardian, Ancient One, Keeper of Wisdom. He acknowledged they had entered this sacred place seeking to prove themselves worthy, not to conquer or destroy but to learn and grow. He admitted their unworthiness, their arrogance, their failure to show proper respect. He asked not for mercy but for the chance to demonstrate they could learn from their mistakes. The Wyrm's jaws remained open, poised to strike. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus began to sing. The melody was unlike anything the others had heard, not a song in the traditional sense but something older, primal, a sound that seemed to resonate with the very stones beneath their feet. It was a song his grandmother had taught him from Earth's oldest traditions, a song that honored the earth and sky, predator and prey, the cycle of life and death that bound all living things together. As Marcus sang, something magical occurred. The bioluminescent fungi began to pulse in rhythm with his voice, the clearing itself seeming to respond to this ancient melody. Night creatures that had fled the Wyrm's anger slowly emerged from hiding, drawn by something they recognized in the human song. Small glowing insects began to dance in the air, creating patterns of light that spiraled upward into the canopy. And slowly, impossibly, the Titan Wyrm's jaws began to close. Its eyes, which had burned with rage moments before, softened to something almost gentle. The massive head lowered, drawn by the song like a flower turning towards sunlight. When Marcus finished singing, the clearing fell into profound silence. The Wyrm's head rested on the ground before him, eyes closed in something resembling peace. Tears streamed down Princess Vara's face though she couldn't explain why. Cross stood with his weapon lowered, his combat-hardened heart touched by something he had no words for. Even Garen stood frozen, his usual bravado completely shattered by what he had witnessed. Marcus rose slowly, his movements gentle and deliberate. He approached the altar, and the Wyrm made no move to stop him. The starfire crystals pulsed with inner light, each one containing enough energy to power a city for a year. Marcus took one crystal carefully, cradling it with reverence rather than greed. He turned and handed it to Princess Vara, who accepted it with trembling hands. He took a second and offered it to Zara, acknowledging Team 7's role in everything that had transpired. The third crystal he lifted, and for a moment everyone thought he would keep it for himself, but instead he walked to where Garen's injured team members lay. Marcus knelt beside them, using the crystal's healing energy to stabilize their wounds, saving lives rather than claiming victory. Garen, battered and humbled, crawled forward on his knees. He reached for the remaining crystals, his greed still burning despite everything. The Wyrm's eye opened, fixing on the Scarlex mercenary. A low growl emerged, and Garen froze. Marcus spoke softly, explaining that the Wyrm judged not just strength but character, not just ability but intention. Garen had shown only greed and disrespect, and the forest had rendered its verdict. He would leave empty-handed or not leave at all. The choice was his. The journey back to the academy took 2 days, and every step was different from the journey in. Teams that had been rivals now traveled together, the trauma of survival creating bonds that competition had prevented. Princess Vara walked beside Marcus, and though her armor still gleamed and his clothes were still torn and dirty, the relationship between them had fundamentally changed. She asked him questions constantly, wanting to understand his philosophy, his training, his worldview. Marcus answered patiently, explaining that Earth had taught humanity a simple truth. They were not the strongest or fastest or most deadly species on their planet, but they had learned to survive by understanding rather than dominating, by adapting rather than conquering. Cross added his own perspective, sharing stories from his warrior culture about how true strength often came in unexpected forms. Zara spoke of her people's philosophy of balance, how the greatest warriors were those who knew when to fight and when to seek other solutions. The conversations continued late into the night, around campfires that felt less like military camps and more like gatherings of friends. When they finally emerged from Valdris Forest, Academy Master Thon waited with the other instructors. His 4 eyes took in the returning teams, noting immediately who was missing and who had changed. Only 12 teams had survived, but those who had were fundamentally different from those who had entered. Princess Vara stepped forward to give her report, as protocol demanded the elite warrior speak first. Her voice carried clearly across the assembled crowd, but it lacked the arrogant confidence that had characterized her before. She began by formally acknowledging her failure, not in the trial but in judgment. She confessed to having mocked trainee Marcus Chen, having called him weak and primitive and unworthy. She admitted before everyone that she had been completely, utterly wrong. The crowd gasped, shocked that a princess of the Althian Empire would publicly admit error. Vara continued, describing how Marcus had saved her life despite her cruelty, how he had spoken to Shadow Stalkers and earned their respect, how he had calmed the Titan Wyrm with nothing but song and reverence. She explained that he had taught her something her elite training had never covered, that true strength wasn't about domination but about understanding, not about forcing submission but about earning respect. Then Princess Vara did something unprecedented in her empire's history. She removed her helmet, knelt before Marcus, and asked his forgiveness. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers, but Vara ignored them. She asked if Marcus would honor her by becoming not her subordinate but her partner, her equal in all things. Cross stepped forward and added his own voice, admitting he too had misjudged the human, that he now understood the saying from his culture, the smallest flame can guide the greatest warrior home. Master Thon allowed the moment to breathe before speaking. His ancient voice carried authority that silenced all whispers. He addressed the crowd, asking if they wanted to know Marcus Chen's full background. He produced a data tablet and read aloud, Marcus Chen, Earth, 6 months at the Academy as stated, but before that, 12 years serving in Earth's Wilderness Preservation Forces, expert in animal behavior and interspecies communication, having worked with dangerous predators on 40 different worlds before arriving at the Academy. The human government had sent him not to learn combat, which he already knew, but to learn galactic culture while teaching others his unique skills. Murmurs ran through the crowd at this revelation, but Marcus raised his hand and spoke. He corrected Master Thon gently but firmly. He explained that while his background was accurate, the Master's interpretation was not. Marcus stated he truly was a trainee because he had much to learn from everyone present. Combat tactics, advanced technology, galactic diplomacy, these were all areas where he was genuinely a beginner. He explained his philosophy, every person has both strengths and weaknesses, and a true warrior acknowledges both rather than pretending either doesn't exist. He told Vara she didn't need to kneel to him, that he had no desire for anyone's submission. What he wanted, what he would be honored to accept, was to stand beside her as an equal, as a partner, as a friend. The formal partnership ceremony was brief but meaningful. Princess Vara and Marcus Chen were registered as an official team, their names entered into the Academy's records. Word of what had happened in Valdris Forest spread quickly through the galactic networks. Within days, every major species had heard the story of the human who spoke to beasts, who calmed the uncalmable, who showed that humanity's contribution to galactic civilization wasn't in matching other species' strengths but in bringing something entirely new and unexpected. Months passed, and Vara and Marcus's team became legendary at the Academy. They handled missions that others considered impossible, combining her tactical brilliance and royal resources with his unique understanding of nature and ability to find peaceful solutions to violent problems. Their success changed how other species viewed humanity. Humans were no longer seen as weak newcomers trying desperately to catch up with more advanced civilizations. Instead, they were recognized as teachers bringing ancient wisdom in new forms, showing that technology and advancement didn't require abandoning respect for the natural world and its rhythms. Other human trainees began arriving at the Academy, each bringing their own unique perspectives shaped by Earth's diverse cultures and environments. The galaxy was learning that humanity's strength came not from any single ability but from their diversity, their adaptability, and their fundamental belief that understanding was more valuable than conquest. In Valdris Forest, the Shadow Stalkers and Titan Wyrm remained, but something had changed there too. Young warriors who entered the forest with respect instead of arrogance, who sought to prove themselves through wisdom rather than violence, found the trials less deadly. Creatures that had killed countless warriors over millennia now allowed careful, respectful passage to those who approached correctly. The forest was teaching a new generation the same lesson Marcus had demonstrated, that true power isn't about forcing the world to submit but about finding your place within it. On Earth, in a small village where ancient traditions were still honored, Marcus's grandmother received a hologram message from her grandson. In it, he stood beside aliens who now called him friend, who had learned from him as he had learned from them. The old woman smiled, her weathered hands folding together in a gesture of gratitude to the ancestors who had preserved the old knowledge through generations. She whispered to the stars that her grandson was doing what their people had always done, showing others that speaking to the earth meant the earth speaks back, that respecting the beast means the beast respects you, that true strength comes not from standing above nature but from understanding your place within it. Across the cosmos, Marcus Chen continued his work, no longer just a trainee but a bridge between humanity's ancient wisdom and the galaxy's advanced civilization, proving every day that the strongest warrior isn't the one who conquers all, but the one who knows when to fight, when to speak, and most importantly, when to simply listen and learn.